everyone, Mario again, coming at you with another movie review. And I have to tell you, no, you are reading that correctly, just in case. Today's episode of Oscar Reviews is a movie from 1985, starring Sylvester Stallone. It, of course, is the sequel to First Blood, Rambo First Blood Part 2. I bet some of you are thinking, wait a minute, this movie got nominated for an Oscar? How the heck does that happen? It is true, it did get nominated for one. Just a nomination, which qualifies it for this series. It got nominated for Best Sound Editing. It also got nominated and won a couple Razzies, which I will address in due time, which I think that was bullshit. But anyway, First Blood, the movie adaptation of Dave Morell's novel of the same name, was a big hit when it came out. And at that time, it was, I think, probably the only one of Stallone's non-Rocky related projects that was a hit, but I could be wrong on that. At least a major hit. So eventually they decided to do a sequel, and the screenplay was written not only by Sylvester Stallone, but by James Cameron. But as Cameron would say years later, he wrote the screenplay, he wrote the story, and Sly wrote the politics. Which I have to say, I don't mind the politics of it, which I will get to, but it basically involves POWs in Vietnam. Now, the movie is directed by George P. Cosmatos, who is known for some other films around the time. Before this, he directed Of Unknown Origin, which I think I've heard, if I remember correctly, I think I've heard good things about that. He followed this movie up with Cobra, another great Stallone movie. You're the disease, I'm the cure. And then after that, the highly underrated underwater film Leviathan. I think if I hear you call me Becky one more time, six-pack, I'm going to pop your tops. All six of them. And after that, he directed Tombstone, a movie that I've actually been meaning to watch for a long time. Maybe I'll get to it another time. And then after that, he directed the political thriller starring Charlie Sheen and Donald Sutherland, Shadow Conspiracy, which sadly was his final film because George P. Cosmatos is no longer with us. He died in 2005 from, I'm trying to see what he died of, lung cancer, so he's greatly missed. So I wish he was still around. He'd probably be directing more entertaining films, but he left us a good legacy of film. Now, the only actors that return from the first movie are Stallone as John J. Rambo and Richard Crenna as Colonel Trotman. Now, the plot is that after the events that happened in the first film, Rambo has been sentenced to time at a hard labor camp, which is where we find him at the beginning, and he's visited by Troutman, who offers Rambo the chance to be released from prison and given full clemency, but on one condition: he has to go into Vietnam to search for POWs. And he agrees, and of course, there's a good back and forth between him and Troutman at the beginning. Sir, do we get to win this time? That depends on you, John. I just love that, because that is a line that a Vietnam veteran that feels like that his country turned his back on him when he came home would say, and it kind of does tie in with his end speech from the ending of the first movie, which I will say I think Stallone should have been nominated for an Academy Award for his performance in the first movie. He could still call himself one. He got nominated for Rocky, but out of all of his other performances, that is one that should have been nominated. But of course, it's not going to be nominated because it was an action thriller film. Granted, not as much as an action thriller as this one, but I think you get the point. It's one of those movies I think that they overlook just because of the genre, even though it might have good acting. Ooh. It's an action movie, so it can't have good acting. Ooh. Yeah, I just hate that. That's a little, I think, stereotype that some people have about this genre, but I think they need to be proven wrong sometimes. Anyway, Rambo is taken out of prison, and he meets the guy in charge of this whole POW search thing, Marshall Murdoch, played by Charles Napier. He's always good to see, you know. He had that little small role in the Austin Powers movies, and of course, Deep Space, he had a main role. He always plays those hard-ass characters, and if I remember correctly, I think he's no longer with us as well. Yeah, he died in 2011. He's greatly missed too. It's going to be hard to find some guy that could match his ability to play those military-type characters again. Now, Murdoch is a bureaucrat who's basically just trying to save his own ass and stuff, as we find out throughout the film. It's not so obvious at first, but as the film goes on, you get to hate him and hate him more. The first hint, though, is when he tells something to Rambo, and then Rambo later tells Trotman that the guy was wrong. It was about a division he was with, yet the division was a different area at the time he said he was with it. Now, Murdoch's orders to Rambo is that he's only allowed to photograph the POWs and not to rescue them, which you could tell for someone like Rambo, who actually has been in a POW camp, as we saw in the first film. He's not going to like that, but he reluctantly agrees. Rambo parachutes in, but due to a minor accident, he loses a lot of his equipment. Murdoch wants to pull the plug, but he's convinced by Trotman not to. And once on the ground, Rambo meets his local contact, a woman named POW, played by Julia Nixon, which she did a good job in this role. My only problem I would say with her is that at times her voice kind of sounds slightly stereotypical, but only at times. I'm going to guess because it's not her native accent, so her putting it on without actually learning the languages effectively and stuff is going to sound like that. But it doesn't really bother me. It's kind of like that one main villager in Men of War. Kind of that. It is like that, but it doesn't bother me. Now, Rambo eventually makes it to the camp he's supposed to go, and they find that there are people there, unlike what Bao said earlier. He finds and rescues a POW from torture against his orders. And, of course, once they're away, an alarm goes up. And when Trotman and a couple of Murdoch's men go to extract them, they see that Rambo has a POW, so Murdoch calls it off. So that's where you could tell that he probably wasn't really interested in finding POWs. He was just interested in just doing it to placate people, which I think is stupid. Because there's some conspiracy theories in real life that some people did that, but whether it's true or not, I don't know. But I'll say if it actually did happen, that they didn't know there were some POWs and they took efforts not to rescue them, I think they deserve to be godsmacked, because those are men, damn it. They served their country. They deserve to be treated with respect. That's why I don't like. That's why I follow the policy: hate the war, not the soldier. That's more true usually with Vietnam, because baby killer. Insert Rambo speech from the first movie. Call me baby killer and all cops on fire. Crap. Who had to spit on me? That. As you can tell, Rambo is captured, and then the rest of the movie is just him escaping and going after soldiers and trying to save the POWs and get his you-know-what out of there. Now, unlike the first movie, this movie, other than that one Academy Award nomination, it was universally hated. At the time of its release, at least. I think the release has kind of warmed up a little bit. Because with fans, I think they at least respect it. On IMDb, it has a 6.2, which I have to say it does deserve. I'll say I personally don't enjoy it as much as I enjoyed the first film or even the fourth film, but I still think it's a pretty good movie. And this is a big difference right here. On Rotten Tomatoes, the critics gave it a 29%. The audience gave it a 62%. So that shows that just shows that some critics could be super snobby about a subject. I mean, I'm looking at the critic reviews here. The only positive ones, here's the positive ones I read. It's awesome! Precisely the sort of unapologetic, brutal piece of work that's sorely missing from contemporary multiplexes. I will agree with that, yeah. Qualifies as a guilty pleasure. I disagree with that. Here's another one. Far from credible, but a terrific, cheer-out-loud action film nonetheless. Immediately and deservedly made Stallone John Rambo a great individualistic screen hero to rival Eastwood's Dirty Harry. I disagree with the beginning of his statement, but then I agree with the rest of it, especially the last part about giving Dirty Harry a run for his money. Here's another one. The one-man demolition squad blasts away again. As you see, most critics don't seem to like it, but I think it's just them talking out of their you-know-what, because it's an action movie. It's just there for popcorn entertainment. Granted, it's going to preach a subject, but not like... And it does that pretty well. It doesn't preach a subject. It doesn't really even do a lot of preachy stuff until the end, but what is said makes sense for Rambo's character, since he is a Vietnam veteran that was treated badly by the public. And then after what happens in the film, he speaks his mind, which I think fits, because his whole speech at the end of the movie, like the first movie, was about how the Vietnam veterans that returned home were basically abandoned by their country for basically for basically fighting for it. In this movie, it's his speech is about the POWs, how this is kind of a paraphrase, he only wants his country to love its soldiers as much as its soldiers love it, which I think is pretty true. Even nowadays and stuff, you can kind of get some of that. Like, why should a soldier, even though I think it's bad, I think we should have been involved in Iraq, why should a soldier who went to Iraq have to come home to a house that's foreclosed on, a wife that's living with relatives because the house was foreclosed on, and have injuries that's going to put him in debt for the rest of his life? See stuff like that, as an example. And that's also one of the reasons I like this original song for the movie, hold on, I'm checking to see if I can get the title correctly. I think it says Peace of Our Lives, but I thought it was Peace in Our Lives. Peace in Our Life. Which was sung by Sly's brother Frank Stallone, which I think he did a pretty good job. And I don't think it deserved the Worst Original Song Razzie Award. That's them speaking out of their what. There's a lot more worse songs that could have given that award to. I think that, if anything, I think that should have gotten an Oscar nomination for Best Original Song. While I'm on the subject of the Razzies, it also won Worst Picture and Worst Actor. And of course, Worst Screenplay, which I think it did not deserve. That's why I don't really like the Razzies. There's some movies I think deserve them. But it also got nominated for Worst Supporting Actress and New Star for Julia Nicholson-Soul, and the Worst Director for Cosmatos, which I think is a stupid, idiotic decision that they made. And now, here's some info about the production. Originally, they wanted Rambo to have a partner in rescuing the POWs, which, for a real-life mission like this, that's probably how they work it. And they allegedly the producers wanted John Travolta to play the partner, but Stallone vetoed the idea. I'm glad he did that, because I can't really see John Travolta playing a partner in a movie like this. I can see him playing a villain, but I can't see him playing like Rambo's partner, unless it's like a new guy and Rambo's going to kind of have to mentor it. That would work more like in a sequel to Rambo 4, if anything, but that's just my idea. And Lee Marvin, one of the guys who was considered to play Trotman in the first film, was originally sent to play Murdoch, but he declined. Oh, and apparently that whole thing about the John Travolta character was originally in Cameron's original script before Sly rewrote it. So I'm glad he cut that out. And the movie was shot mostly on location in Mexico, which I have to say I miss on-location shooting for places like this. Nowadays they probably wouldn't, but I still love it. I mean, I don't mind sets, but there's only so much you can do on a set for an area like a jungle. I mean, Predators. I rest my case. And it was shot between June '84 and August '84, so it only took like a couple months to shoot, but I think the outcome is an entertaining flick. Now, do I think it should have gotten other Oscar nominations besides sound editing and, of course, the one I've already stated, original song? Cinematography, probably. They didn't have it. If it existed, it probably might have gotten gotten a nomination for visual effects. I don't think they're going to give an action movie an honorary Oscar for visual effects or something. Oh, man, the visual effects one I think existed. Yeah, I think it should have been nominated. It definitely should have gotten at least a nomination for Jerry Goldsmith's score. Oh, Jerry's Goldsmith, excuse me. That was an excellent score, and of course, like I said, I love the song at the end. Now the acting, Sylvester Stallone is once again great as John Rambo. You could tell he really is into the character. That's why I can't really see anyone playing this character unless, of course, they went fully with the story. But they've already done a movie like that almost 10 years ago, that one with Tommy Lee Jones and Del Toro. So they should just leave it alone, at least, like, unless they want to do it in like 2050 or 2060 when enough time has passed. That's the only way I could see them making another Rambo movie without Sly in the role. Richard Crenna, once again great as Colonel Trotman. He definitely owns that character, which is why I'm glad they didn't recast it for Rambo 4. Napier as Marshal Murdoch brought enough of a bureaucrat to the role, but also made the role memorable enough to where you wanted to smack Murdoch the moment you saw him, but smack him harder as the movie went on. Steven Burkoff was our main Russian bad guy. Lieutenant Colonel, I'm going to have trouble with his last name, excuse me, Podofsky, which you could tell the moment you see him that you want to smack him. Even the POWs know he's like, he's dead. He did a pretty good job. Julia Nixon as Kobo, I thought they did a good job. And even though it's not really at the forefront, the little romance that develops between her character and Rambo is believable. So, and they spend just enough time together that you can see him believably mourning her death. Oops, I just gave something away, but I think those of you who know the movie, know the history of the movies, will probably already know that she's not going to appear in the sequel. So I just gave the reason why. So it's believable that he would do it. And of course, as my friend Efri has mentioned, sometimes when he was talking, he makes him wonder if this would have been the beauty that would have tamed the beast. I wonder that too. all the minor characters who play, all the actors who played the minor characters, they did okay jobs, I would say. One thing I'll say I'm happy about is this movie was a financial success. It was made on a budget of $25.5 million. Domestically, it made $150 million, and worldwide, it made $300 million. So it made a sizable budget, enough to warrant the one sequel that came out after it in '88. Afterwards in '88, and then the sequel that came out 20 years after that, Rambo 4, which I wish I'd been able to see that in theaters, because that would have been an enjoyable movie to see in theaters. When you're pushed, killing's as easy as breathing. Now, my rating for Rambo 2, excuse me. I had Rambo 4 in the mind, excuse me, Rambo 2. Rambo First Blood Part 2. Well, I will say it's, at least for me, it's an enjoyable film, but I'll say I don't like it as much as the first one or the fourth one. It is still a worthy sequel to it, and it ups the action, because the first one is more of a thriller than with some action than it is a full-on action movie, whereas this one, not really, there's like some minor thriller aspects, but it's more of an action movie, and it does keep one entertained. I give it a 4 out of 5 stars.